We are not a direct implementer, which means because we work with partners on the ground, where we operate, HFG, we find ourselves, or we consider ourselves a platform through which we bring partners around the table, where we design, develop, conceptualize, and implement through our partners various initiatives and activities. So a lot of these objectives are born and are realized through partnerships. So our objectives are to increase the knowledge and skills of HIV prevention amongst youth, increase the uptake of quality youth-centered prevention services, increase the practice of safer sex behaviors, increase economic access or economic empowerment by youth, increase youth participation and ownership, and really this for us is not tokenism, but really embedding it even in our governance structure, in our core messages, involving them, and really learning from them. And that's also a role the private sector can play. I mean, some of our partners in this room have a very close understanding and really a finger on the pulse of what's happening to youth and their insights, their attitude, aspirations, and behaviors. And that's one avenue that we can actually partner together to be able to understand what some of these dynamic changes are taking place in our youth today, so that we can tailor messages to be able to most resonate with them. And lastly, improve self-esteem and empowerment amongst the youth. We know this is a transition phase and there's a lot taking place. If we think back many years when we were youth ourselves, we remember that transition phase that we were going through, and and I think this world is a much different world than most of us, I would say, grew up in. So, you really need to start from inside. Okay, so looking at the landscape and the core issues, we know that amongst the youth, the top 3 fears are really unemployment, pregnancy, and HIV and AIDS. And these fears really have contributed to an erosion of hope, and in many cases highlighted a willingness to take risks, and risks in many ways, engaging in drug abuse, alcohol abuse, joining groups and gangs, or going into illegal practices, but sometimes even just staying at home and being despondent and just despair, and and I think this is even the worst of all, just having no hope for yourself. If you don't have a hope or purpose for yourself, really, that's the starting point. But we know the connections are key, and this is really positive relationships, not just at home, but amongst their peers, institutions. So our approach as a program is not just targeting the individual, but also targeting the peer group, and also targeting the community and the institutions through which that influence the peer. We know that there are high rates of youth unemployment in Kenya. One statistic I saw is 2.5 million youth are unemployed, and a vast number are underemployed. We know that, particularly in the development world, there's been limited access to comprehensive, keyword being comprehensive, information and services on HIV and AIDS and sexual reproductive health. And this is really even stemming from our homesteads, where we all know there's a challenge where parents are not adequately giving the information that the youth need to be able to make the decisions they need to make. So it even starts at home. So that information is born at home and goes out into community, and also to us as HFG, one of the partners, as a behavior change communication, to ensure that we're communicating and delivering the most comprehensive information to the youth. And lastly, I go again to Jane's slides. There's been a lot of investment in this space, but there's also been a lot of projects working in isolation. So since we see ourselves as a platform, we also want to bring people to the table and see how we can integrate a lot of products, a lot of programs, a lot of services that are being offered, so that we can leverage synergies. And that's the foundation through which we've invited you all here today as well. So our approach, we see a positive spin in this. As Emmanuel called out, the youth really are the future, and the future of Kenya. And what a bright future we have in our youth. And it's really, I mentioned the transition period where really, they're able to determine their core aspirations and their capabilities. And we know that given a supportive environment, the youth are able to achieve, to fulfill their inherent abilities, and they can build on the foundation so that they're able to get and achieve the future that they destined for themselves. So HFG's approach doesn't just address the risks, and these are the risks associated directly with HIV and AIDS. Though we do partner with others who, where we offer contraceptives, where we offer messaging, where we link them to referral services, those are the ones that are addressing the risk. But we look at the youth more holistically, and our programming is more geared towards addressing their needs and fears holistically. And this is a different way of working. This is one of the unique bits about HIV-free generation. We're looking at the holistic development of youth. So just like you called out Emmanuel, the economic pillar, the social pillar, the self-esteem, the leadership, the political governance as well, so there's self-esteem and leadership. So we're looking at the youth holistically. Really, for us, the goal is to foster competence, confidence, character, and connectedness. And this really is directed to the promotion of healthy and productive lifestyles by our youth. And since we're behavior change communication, we've anchored our communication pillars, our communication messages, in really 3 forms. First is for the youth to have a presence of mind. Remember when I spoke about having, the hopelessness? We'll now replace that with hope. So it's the presence of mind, the awakefulness, and the knowledge that this is what you want to do, this is what you can be, and this is how you're going to get there. So first of all, it's that the youth themselves, and we don't take the responsibility for your destiny out of anyone's hands but the youth, or as a youth yourself. So having the presence of mind, knowing what it is you want, being able to withstand the peer pressure and any of the evils or any unhealthy behaviors that come your way, but having a focus and knowing this is where you want. We all say it starts with a dream. So having that presence of mind. Secondly is taking the action of whatever platforms are given. First of all, a platform that you create for yourself. You're in charge of your own life, so it's your destiny. So going out and being able to search and what's happening out there. And we all know people like that who have been dynamic. Many of us sitting in this room, you knew what you wanted, you went after it, and you're able to achieve what you want. So taking that action, first of all, by creating platforms for yourself. Secondly, by taking advantage of platforms that are created by HIV-free generation and any of the other partners in this room and outside of this room. And lastly, that is the achievement of the future that you destine for yourself as a youth. We like to call this internally conscious decisions future ya nguvu. So the way we operate, and this is one of the things that we learned from the private sector, is, they've done a fantastic job through branding. So one of the things we've adopted in HIV-free generation programming is to brand our programming. Brand it with a brand that resonates with the youth. And I must say, Jipange was developed out of an exercise in 2008, created by the youth themselves. I think we all know what it means. Jipange is all about taking control of your life. It's catchy. It's been around as a brand for 3 years now. We're just looking at relaunching it. For us, Jipange is not just a brand that is a tangible asset, but for us, it's a philosophy, a way of life that we're asking the youth to be able to implement in their lives. And alongside this, we have 5 pillars that go with this philosophy. It starts with knowing your status. Jijue hali yako. How many wanajijua? Wow, okay, that's excellent. So I'm preaching to the converted. So it starts with knowing your status. And then jifahamishe, we spoke about a platform for us to offer information, not just about HIV prevention, but also, economic, what opportunities they can get for economic empowerment, how they can be able to build their self-esteem, and so much other information that they require during this period. For girls as well, for young men first of all, and girls also, gender-based violence and a lot of the vials that come with that, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. The pillar in the middle is Junue, which is all about the economic empowerment. The number one fear for youth is unemployment. So how can we economically empower them? So this is part of our philosophy and what we're encouraging. Jiamini, which is all about the self-esteem, believe in yourself, presence of mind. And lastly, and very importantly, jikinge. So if you're able to achieve this, you must protect yourself so that you can be able to achieve what it is you want for yourself, what you're working so hard to be able to achieve for yourself. So in a nutshell, this is the Jipange philosophy. I'll just take you through our partnership model. We identified 4 platforms based on the need on the ground, particularly for the youth, that we'd like to engage with you on. And some of these I called out, the first one being economic development platform. So who and how can we partner with to be able to deliver economic empowerment programs? You know, there's a lot of stuff. We're not just here also to create new ideas. We see ourselves as also scanning the landscape to see what is happening. What is happening out there? Who's doing what? Remember, we need to identify core competencies and bring them to the table. So who's doing what? Also, if there are any interesting ideas that are taking place, how can we as a program come to the table as a partner, you know, and bring some of our resources as well so that we can ensure that we either replicate or scale up certain programs. Secondly is girl empowerment, and this is one example that where we're addressing the risks. I called out the vulnerability of young girls, particularly, you know, more so the 10 to 24, you know, and the vulnerability they face. You know, a lot of that is because they're having, you know, sex with older partners, probably in their 30s and beyond. And as we all know, this is what we call transactional sex. You're doing this to be able to get something. Many times it's economic. You know, so how can we work and who can we work with? And certainly there's some partners who we've been engaging with, who first of all share this, understand that this is a core need, and realize that they also have a competence that they can bring to the table and be able to address this. One of the products, one of the proposals that we have that we're working on the table right now is sex tourism for young girls in Mombasa, and seeing how we can come together with various partners to be able to get a number of girls out of school. You know, give them the life skill development, build their self-esteem, economically empower them. You know, so hopefully they will achieve a greater future for themselves. The next one is media awareness and communication. I mentioned we're a behavior change communication campaign, and we all know the role that media has, and mass media has, certainly, in terms of reaching and talking to the youth. So what platforms or who can we engage in to develop various innovative programs, initiatives that can be able to talk to and really connect with the youth? I will showcase one example here, and Kathy will speak a little bit later about that. It's sugar. And that's one example that where we've partnered with the MTV networks to be able to develop sugar. And I'll speak about that in my next slide. Lastly, and this is a huge opportunity, is a digital platform. If you want to connect with the youth today, you have to be where they are. And where they are increasingly is on Facebook, largely on Facebook, but on the website. So we've got to be, and I think in many ways Kenya really hasn't taken advantage of its position in sub-Saharan Africa, the penetration and the usage of the website. So Jipange wants to be at the forefront of you know, leading this digital revolution or connection with the youth. And we're looking at using digital in various aspects, not just for brand and communicating our brand and our philosophy to the youth, but also our messaging. And thirdly, perhaps even more importantly, and where the private sector comes in, is what innovative opportunities we can take advantage. The government is rolling out the e-health strategy, I think mid this year. Digital villages are also rolling out around the same time. How can we use that to be able to offer prevention services? For example, counseling over phones, you know, blogging sessions for youth living with HIV, a particularly underserved group, you know? So we're looking at digital in a variety of manners. And then also, you know, just socially connecting with them, research, getting to understand what they think and how they go about their business. The last pillar is in emerging interventions. Really, we felt we didn't want to lock anyone out. So we've put in there a platform, emerging interventions. This allows us the opportunity to really recognize and see any initiatives that are taking place from various partners that we can be able to partner with. Just because they don't fit in any of the 4 blocks, we can still be able to go after them and implement them together for the betterment of our youth. So I just want to take you through some of the products. I mentioned Sugar, and Kathy will speak a little bit more about it. Sugar is a 3-part television drama that captured the youth lifestyles of 6 friends, and this was really done against the backdrop of HIV and AIDS. It was aired in Kenya, I think, early part of last year, in 2009. It was filmed in Kenya and featured a cast that was largely Kenyan. And I think thanks to MTV, which is a core competence they brought on board, was really the high quality production that they put together. And this is one example where they brought to the fore their core competence, but utilizing the messaging that we knew was so desperate and so desperately needed from the development angle. We were able to craft a storyline that really resonated with youth right across Kenya, but also beyond Kenya, as Sugar was shown in about 22 other African countries, and I believe beyond Africa as well. You mentioned it's just being shown in Jamaica.
When accomplished, then we will achieve the Vision 20. But these are some of the infrastructure projects that